Hey guys, TGKS Productions. In this video I have a top 5 tips for beginners in Red Dead Online. Now, I say beginners because the tips I'm going to be giving in this video, most advanced players that have pretty much been playing Red Dead Online and even maybe the Red Dead Online beta likely would have already applied these tips. I'm going to be pretty much starting right from when you exit the tutorial of Red Dead Online, and as far as a beginner is concerned, what steps they should be taking. So these tips are going to range from, how to make money, how to save money, leveling up, making smart investments, pretty much ranging from everything that I just stated there, all of the above. And most obviously advanced players would have likely already have gone through that. So this video is going to be most beneficial to beginners overall, and I'm pretty much just going to be speaking, or the tips I'm going to be giving you in this video are going to be pretty much what I've learned as a beginner, in sort of the experiences that I've learned to try to obviously, give any beginners that are going to be coming into Red Dead Online. I do believe Red Dead Online is slowly growing. I do believe the player base is likely going to keep growing, so I do believe there's going to be obviously a lot of beginners coming in, and I do believe this can be very helpful for that reason, to try to pretty much, with the tips that I'm giving, try to help those players have a better startup and really a smoother startup than I did, to try to obviously, give them my experiences and obviously the pros and cons of my startup, to try to again help them have a better startup than I did. So pretty much once you go through the Red Dead Online beta, all you really have is a couple of weapons. You'll have some items that are in your satchel. You have a horse that the tutorial will give you, your camp, and that's pretty much about it. You have very little money, very little gold. Obviously you're going to be a low level, so pretty much at this point you're going to be concerned with, how do I start making money? How can I obviously save money so that I'm being as efficient as possible? Obviously you want to be making a lot of money, but you also want to be saving money at the same time. And how can I be leveling up as well? So those pretty much are going to be the questions that you're going to be asking yourself. Now this is a clip right when I exited the tutorial about a year and a half ago. You'll see I only have about 17 gold nuggets on me and $13.59. So that's pretty much around where a beginner is going to be at in Red Dead Online after exiting the beta. So obviously you don't have a lot of currency. So at this point you're pretty much concerned with, how can I start making, some money? How can I obviously be saving money? You're going to be concerned with leveling up as well. But I would say those are probably the two predominant ones, making money and saving money. And that pretty much brings me into my first tip, and that is living off of the land. Now some of you may be confused by what I mean by living off the land, but I'm going to give you a good example right here. So what I'm doing right here is I'm basically hunting or chasing down a buck with my lasso. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lasso the buck, and end up just going up with my knife and killing him. Although I'm not a beginner when I recorded this, you can do this as a beginner. Obviously, you're going to have a horse, you're going to have a lasso, you're going to have a knife. And the important thing to note here is I am not using any, this doesn't cost me anything. I'm not using any ammunition, so I'm obviously not going to have to pay for any ammo. Everything I'm doing here, or the way that I'm hunting this buck, is free. So do keep that in mind. I'm technically saving money with the way that I'm hunting this buck. But the other important thing, and really the other way that I'm saving money, is I'm skinning the deer here, or the buck, and I'm taking the meat. And what I can do with this meat is I can take it back to my camp and end up cooking it and storing it in my satchel for when I need it to refill my cores. Instead of me going to something like a general store and buying, food items from there, I'm just basically hunting and gathering my food items that way. And that can result in saving a lot of money, as I'm going to end up showing you here. So right here, I'm back in my camp. I'm going to cook the venison. You'll see here I have the option to season the venison, which essentially what the seasoning does, there's a certain herb for, there's 3 different types of seasons you can have. Each herb is going to benefit a different core. So if the venison doesn't already fill up that particular core, seasoning it, depending on what season you use, for example, mint, seasoning the meat with mint is going to end up completely filling up your health core, if the venison doesn't already do that. But I save my seasons for a different type of meat, which I'll briefly mention at the end of the video. But essentially this is what you're going to want to do as a beginner. You're going to want to obviously, save the meat that you get, take it back to your camp, and cook it. And this is going to result in you saving a lot of money in the long run. I mean, of course you can utilize living off the land even beyond being a beginner, but this is the most important as a beginner, as you're going to see, because a lot of the food items you can buy, such as within the catalog that I'm going to show you, one, obviously they're going to cost money, where this is free, and two, a lot of them don't even have as good of effects as the venison will, or meat like the venison, as I'm going to show you here. Now, if we look at the catalog here and some of the provisions we can buy, just giving you some examples, if we look at the canned foods, one thing, look at the effects and the price. One thing you'll notice is the effects. If you took note of the effects that the venison had on your cores, you'll see that these don't even have really as good of effects as the venison, and the venison actually reaches all your cores, whereas this, as you'll see with a lot of the canned foods here, they don't even necessarily they don't reach your Deadeye core, where the venison did refill that, and they also cost money. Now you probably say, well, these are fairly cheap. You're right, but you have to also understand, as a beginner, you're not going to have a lot of money, and two, you're not just going to be buying one of these items. You're going to be buying multiple of these items. And to be honest, a lot of these items can be occasionally, I would say, maybe if not looted off of dead bodies, they can be found through various interiors through the map. So you really don't want to be spending money on these items. Obviously, just by hunting, you're going to be saving a lot more money, and they're likely going to even have better effects on your cores than a lot of these items that can be bought in the catalog in the general stores. And even an added bonus of living off the land, you're not only going to be saving money, but you could also be making some money. In the case here, basically if I took my buck to the butcher and I sold it, if I kept the meat and I sold the skin, I had a perfect skin here, perfect carcass, as well as the antlers. I added up, I'd make around $9.40. That's a nice little chunk of money for a beginner. Personally, for me, I'm not going to take this to the butcher because I have the trader rule, which I'll touch on a little bit later in the video, sort of regarding the rules, and that'll benefit that business. But as a beginner, you're obviously not going to have those rules, so you can also be making a little bit of money on the side by obviously taking these animal materials when you're hunting to the butcher. To give you even another example here, I'm going to craft a tonic. Tonics pretty much refill your outer core, which affect, or refill or fortify your outer core, which affect the rate at which your inner core drains. You'll see here I'm going to craft a potent miracle tonic. You'll see the ingredients below that it takes. Certain herb, pretty much how you craft tonics is with certain herbs that can be found throughout the world of Red Dead Online. You can see obviously the herbs that it takes below there at that list. But essentially I'm just going to craft this miracle tonic, and I'm going to store it in my satchel for later use in case I need it, maybe in PvP or PvE. And I'm going to show you here actually in the catalog how much this potent miracle tonic actually costs. If I go in the tonic section here in the catalog, the potent miracle tonic costs $7. So you can see by crafting this, I am saving a lot of money, because if you were to try to stock up on this from the catalog, you could easily, you could definitely spend a lot of money, way more than you would be when you're stocking up on food items. So you definitely can save a lot of money by crafting the tonics as well. What's also nice with the crafting is, as you can see here, there's an option to show all when crafting, and what that actually does is show you everything you can craft, even the items that you don't have yet, or that you're not able to craft, because there are certain craftable items that you need pamphlets for that can be bought at a fence. But what's nice about this is, at least for the tonics you can currently craft, it'll obviously show you the ingredients you need for those, so you obviously be able to go into the world and seek them out, or maybe potentially look up a YouTube video to see where those are located in the world of Red Dead. And obviously living off the land applies to your horse as well, as far as food items and tonics. Just to give you an example, what you were looking at there was a wild carrot plant or herb. I'm pretty much just showing you the location here, and the reason why I'm doing that is because this herb or plant can pretty much be found all over the map of Red Dead Online. You'll see here I'm in a completely different area. I'm down near Tumbleweed, way further than I was where you saw where the wild carrot was, where I just showed you previously to this. And this can pretty much be found over, throughout the entire map. The reason why I say it is because this actually has the same effect as the carrots you can buy from the catalog or the general stores, and obviously you can get these for free. Same goes for crafting tonics with your horses. Obviously you're going to have to seek out the herbs for those as well. And if you're not sure about what effects an herb has, at least right then and there when you pick it, you can go in your satchel and see that. But again, I'm just trying to show you that living off the land applies to everything, even with your horse, and you can obviously save money overall. The last thing I said I was going to talk about with this tip, or sort of a sub tip to living off the land, is seasoning your meat. Now I said I like to save the seasoning for a particular type of meat, and that is big game meat. How you get big game meat is pretty much from every really predator in Red Dead Online, or every animal that will willingly kill you or usually attack you before you attack them. That pretty much consists of wolves, cougars, grizzly bears, alligators, animals like that. And essentially, if you get the big game meat from them and you take it back to your camp and you cook it and you season it, it's going to fill your inner cores to the fullest potential. I'll actually end up showing you me eating it, and it'll actually yield a golden core for whatever core you seasoned. For example, if you want to completely, I guess, fortify your health core, you're going to want to season the big game meat with minty meat. That's what I'm doing here. That's going to max out or pretty much yield a golden core for your health core. If you want to do it for your stamina core, you're going to want to use organa or the organa herb. And then obviously if you want to do it for the your deadeye core, you're going to want to use the creeping thyme herb. So that's pretty much how that works. And as I'm going to show you right here, pretty much if you eat this meat, it's going to, again, I'm eating minty meat there, so I seasoned it with mint, and that pretty much fortified my health core and I fortified to its highest potential. And you can see I have a golden core here. So that's also another tip I want to recommend. So if you ever get attacked, obviously, by a predator like wolves or a cougar, grizzly bear, make sure you get that meat off of them, because it can be beneficial to craft this, seasoning it and crafting it back at your camp. Now, there's one more thing I want to add to this. I know this tip is running very long, and I promise the other 4 tips will not be as long as this one. But the one thing, maybe with the exception of ammunition, that you should be buying from the catalog and consistently buying from the catalog is gun oil. Gun oil is really the one thing you can't naturally get from the world of Red Dead Online. You can occasionally loot it off of enemies or find it in various interiors throughout the map, but it's not going to be enough to be able to obviously sustain you in Red Dead Online. So that is really the one thing you're going to have to buy consistently, or among one of the few things you have to buy consistently from the catalog in Red Dead Online. Now, the second thing that I recommend beginners do is prioritize story missions. Now, there are 2 types of story missions in Red Dead Online. There are the Moonshiner ones, which obviously are going to be related to the Moonshiner Rule, and as a beginner you're not going to be able to do those missions. And then the ones that you're seeing here, which are the ones that you are going to be able to complete as a beginner. Now, there are 13 of these total, and they're not all going to be here up in the pause menu for you when you first get into Red Dead Online, because you do have to complete these somewhat in a certain order, and they will show up as you complete them. And there's 13 of them total, and I believe there are 9 that are related to having good honor, so you're going to have good honor to complete them, and 4 that are related to having bad honor or dishonor, and you're going to have dishonor for completing those. But there are 2 main reasons why I recommend beginners prioritizing these missions. And what you're seeing here is a mission that I was actually going through the first time. This is one of the ones I happened to record. And essentially the 2 reasons, I said there were 2 main reasons why a beginner should prioritize these. And the first of which is the first time that you go through all of these missions, you're going to earn more cash, more gold, and I believe even more XP the first time you complete these. Anytime after that, you will not earn as much as you did the first time. So this is definitely a reason to prioritize these, because you can definitely earn a fair amount of cash and gold, as well as even potentially XP from completing these. I'm not going to give you an exact total. I don't exactly remember how much I made altogether from these missions as a whole, or after completing all 13 of them, but I do know that the first time that you go through these missions, you do earn more overall than you are any other time after. Any other time you complete them after the first time, you're not going to be earning as much. I believe you're going to earn probably around $20 on average the second or third time, or again any other time after the first time completing them. I want to say around $20, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but you will earn way more than that the first time that you go through them. And the second reason I recommend beginners prioritizing these is I believe these missions are a great way to sort of start working your way into the mechanics of Red Dead Online, as far as regarding sort of the combat system and getting used to PvE. I believe these missions are definitely great regarding that, and again, I believe that's another reason why beginners should prioritize going through these missions. Now, there are also stranger missions that you can complete in free mode, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend prioritizing these missions, at least not on the same level as the story missions, just because as far as I know, you pretty much do not get a bonus for completing these for the first time. What is cool though, you will get a sort of an introductory cutscene for each stranger that you meet, so I do recommend that you do eventually do these, obviously to get some variety in Red Dead Online. Also, again, for sort of working your way into the mechanics, getting some getting more PvE experience. However, I would definitely I wouldn't prioritize these as being as important as doing the story missions. The story missions is definitely more important overall because you're going to be earning more with those, again, for the first time, being able to build your currency up, leveling up, and obviously making your way on, making your way to making, investments into Red Dead Online that's going to make you even more money. The third thing I recommend for beginners is starting and maintaining a daily challenge streak. Now, if you look up on the screen here, you're going to see there's two types of daily challenges. There's general daily challenges, which is the 7 I just showed you, which as a beginner you're going to be worried about those. And then there's up to 12 role-related ones, as I'm showing you right here. And those are going to be concerned with depending on what roles you're invested in Red Dead Online and how progressed you are through those roles. So obviously as a beginner you're not going to be concerned with those. But those are essentially the two types of daily challenges. And you're going to be, as a beginner, you're going to be focused with the general ones, the ones that I'm showing you here. I'm going to briefly go over daily challenges just to sort of reinstate, because I have an entire video dedicated to the importance of keeping a daily challenge streak. So I'm just going to sort of reinstate some key points from that video in this video. But essentially, you have those two types of daily challenges. As a beginner, you're going to be focused with the general ones. And pretty much each daily challenge that you complete, you're going to earn gold and XP. And essentially, pretty much as soon as you complete a daily challenge, you're going to start a streak. You only need to complete one daily challenge to keep and maintain a streak. So, if you get on Red Dead Online every day and complete at least one daily challenge, you're going to maintain your streak. Now, the importance of that is as you build up your streak over the course of 4 weeks or 28 days, you're going to build the streak, but you're also going to build a gold multiplier. So each daily challenge you complete, you're going to be earning even more gold with. And then as far as those 7 general ones, you actually can can earn a bonus for completing all 7 of those. So your bonus is even going to be a little bit higher. But essentially, the importance of the streak is that you're going to have a gold multiplier, higher earning. You're going to have higher earnings for gold as far as doing each of these daily challenges. And if you keep the streak even past the 28 days, you're going to maintain that multiplier. So that's really why you want to consider keeping a streak in Red Dead Online, for the sake of the gold earnings. And here's actually an example of how easy it is to keep a daily challenge streak. Keep in mind you only have to complete one daily challenge. Essentially, I just had to visit a shop in Tumbleweed. The butcher counts as a shop, so I just quick traveled. Obviously, I didn't show you the whole quick travel, but I quick traveled to Tumbleweed, visited the butcher, and I was able to obviously complete this daily challenge, maintain my streak. This took me all of about a minute to a minute and 30 seconds. And this is one of many examples that I can give you. There's always usually at least 1 or 2 daily challenges that are very easy to complete, and that goes for both the general ones and the role ones. So it really is pretty easy to keep a streak. You just have to obviously always remember to get on Red Dead Online for at least a couple minutes out of the day to obviously do one of the daily challenges, but it is very easy to keep the streak, and I definitely recommend that you consider keeping a daily challenge streak for the sake of the gold earnings. You can also earn a fair amount of XP from these if you were to decide to grind them. As a beginner though, I would definitely recommend sort of staying away from the PvP related daily challenges, but I definitely would consider, like I said, keeping a streak for the sake of, even if you don't plan on playing Red Dead Online, regularly, in the sense of playing for like 30 minutes to an hour to a couple of hours, but you plan on being invested with all the updates and buying the new content, I definitely recommend keeping the daily challenge streak for that. That way, if you do decide to grind in preparation for an update, you're going to be earning, at least if you grind the daily challenges, you'll be earning the most amount of gold that you can possibly earn with those. So definitely recommend considering starting a daily challenge streak. So at this point, you've established living off the land, you've done the story missions, you may have even started a daily challenge streak, so you're starting to build your currency as far as your gold and cash is concerned in Red Dead Online. So what is your next step? Well, your next step at this point should be starting to make smart investments. And for Red Dead Online, at least at this point, those are the roles. And there are total of 4 roles in Red Dead Online, and the one that I recommend every beginner get invested in is the trader role. And there are 2 main reasons why I recommend that a beginner get invested with the trader role as their first role, or I guess you could say big investment. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on how the trader role works, just because there are a ton of videos on YouTube that already do that. But as far regarding the first reason why I believe the trader role is a role that every beginner should invest in first, is essentially, if we go back to near the beginning of the video when I was talking about living off the land, essentially just takes living off the land to a whole new level, or to a business level. I talked about, obviously, as I hunt now, I deliver my my animal parts and materials to crypts now instead of the butcher. Essentially, that's what you're going to want to be doing at this point, because as you're seeing here on the screen, if you deliver your animal parts or materials to crypts, it's obviously going to benefit your trader business. And given this idea, sort of just applying living off the land to a business, I believe this is definitely really easy, very easy for beginners to grasp. Since you've already sort of been applying these ideas, now you're just putting it in a business form. So I think given that, this is definitely one reason why a beginner should invest in a trader role. And especially if you came from GTA Online, if you've ever played that, this business is fairly similar to a GTA Online business as well. So obviously that would even be, I guess, another reason if you played that game to invest in this first, because you would understand this business even more given that. And the second reason I recommend the trader role being the first role that a beginner invests in is because there actually is an additional role that you cannot invest in without first being invested in the trader role, and that is the rule that was most recently added into Red Dead Online this past December, which is the Moonshiner Rule. And I believe with both of these roles working together, if you were to run these simultaneously, you can make a pretty good amount of money in Red Dead Online. You really can, running both these at the same time. So I think that's another really good reason as to why you should invest in the trader role first, is because the trader role is actually the only role that is, I guess, in a sense tied to another role. The Moonshiner role is sort of a continuation of the trader role, even though it's not exactly the same, but it is supposedly a continuation, and you do have to be involved or invest in the trader role first. So again, I do believe that is another great reason as to why you should invest in the trader role first, so that you can obviously end up being able to also invest in this role as well. I do want to clarify, in the case that more advanced players watching this, they may say, well, why wouldn't you suggest the collector role, considering that you can make a ton of money off of that? And you can. However, I believe for a beginner that is not necessarily the role you should start with. And the reason why, there's a couple reasons I have. One, if they didn't play story mode, they may not be as familiar with sort of the landscape or the world, so it can be somewhat frustrating trying to find some of the collectibles. I do understand you can look them up on YouTube. However, you have to understand that it's going to take probably a couple of hours in order to be able to find all these collectibles. In order to be able to complete a collection which is where you really make the real money with the collector role. Or you're going to have to spend a lot of money quick traveling. So, as a beginner, I definitely, don't think that is a role they should start with. The order that I would personally go in is the trader role, the Moonshiner role, collector role, and then bounty hunter role. The reason why I do the bounty hunter role last is because I believe that role requires the most grinding to really earn a profit from that, and is very PvE based. And some of those, especially like the legendary bounties, can be very difficult, as some of the most difficult missions in the game, and I think a beginner will find those very difficult. So that is sort of my reasoning behind my ordering. But I think the trader role, sort of as the reasons that I gave, a little bit ago, that's why I would suggest that being the first, again, role that a beginner should invest in. The last tip I have for beginners is staying away from PvP. There are two main reasons why I suggest that beginners should stay away or willingly avoid PvP, or not willingly get involved with PvP. I can tell you right now, I'm speaking from experience. I played Red Dead Online, or I should say the Red Dead Online beta, pretty much as early as you can possibly play it. And there were two main sort of turnoffs for me that caused me to really not play Red Dead Online, or at least the beta at that time, for around 2 months, until really the February, I want to say 26 update in 2019. One of the reasons was the fact that that I knew that Rockstar had a lot of improvements to make just from pretty much day one, and also PvP. PvP really aggravated me as a beginner, especially because I think I started playing PvP a couple weeks in, and obviously a lot of people already had a lot of time invested in PvP, and I was still a beginner, and I got very frustrated. So again, I'm speaking from pure experience here, but there are two main reasons why I believe a beginner should avoid PvP. Now, the first reason I have for staying away from PvP as a beginner is pretty much what I just stated a minute ago, is you're going to be facing people that are going to have way more experience than you. Again, Red Dead Online and even the beta have been out for about a year and a half now. So, the matchmaking isn't necessarily the greatest. It's not like you're going to be matched with other beginners. You could be up, with you could be facing or competing with someone who's 200, 300, maybe even 400 levels higher than you. And of course, they're going to have way more experience than you. And again, they're ultimately probably going to dominate you in that PvP match. So that is definitely one really big reason why you're going to want to stay away from PvP is really the experience difference. Now, I do understand you have to obviously gain your experience at some point, but as a beginner, that is definitely not the time. There are a number of things obviously you want to sort of work on as a beginner. One being sort of getting used to the mechanics of combat in a sense for Red Dead Online with PvE. And sort of what I'm talking about there is there's three main things I'm going to show you up here on the screen, and that is pretty much your lock-on mode, your sensitivity, and your control type. You want to make sure you are applying those to PvE, so that point when you get into PvP, you're already comfortable with them, and it's going to be like second nature to you. I can tell you right now, if you're not comfortable with the three things that I just stated, you are 100% not ready for PvP, because pretty much every other player in that PvP match, or the more experienced ones, are going to be comfortable again with their lock-on mode, their sensitivity, and their control type. So apply those to sort of PvE again with the story missions, maybe even eventually with the bounty hunter role down the road. Apply it to PvE first, and then you can sort of work your way into PvP. In sort of even like I said, you want to make sure you're comfortable with those three things. One example I'll give you here is you can see my stats. I personally like to play in standard FPS 2. Pretty much when compared to standard control, the run button is switched from X to R1, so it allows you to sort of be able to run and gun and aim down the sights more efficiently. A lot of PvP users are going to use that. I'm not saying that you have to use that, but I'm very comfortable with that, and that is key. You have to be comfortable with these stats, and that's sort of all of the experience process. And the second reason why beginners should stay away from PvP is simply because they're going to be ill-equipped. You start out with weapons that you typically aren't going to use in PvP. Cattleman Revolver, Carbon Repeater, you're typically not going to use those in PvP. Most experienced players won't use those. As I'm showing you here, you're also going to have more high capacity ammo, such as like high velocity rounds, express rounds, slug rounds. They're going to deal more damage with certain weapons, and you unlock those obviously as you level up in the world. And as a beginner, you might not have those unlocked yet. And there's also even ability cards in the game that are going to give you a great edge in combat, in many different combat situations and different combat modes. There are plenty of different ability cards that are great for many different combats, or really PvP situations, and even PvE. But again, you are going to be greatly ill-equipped as a beginner. You're likely not going to have you're not going to have enough money or funds to be able to invest in a lot of new weapons for PvP. You might not even be the level for some of them. Same thing with the more high capacity rounds and the ability cards. So given all that, obviously you're going to want to sort of work your way up a little bit more. Again, establish more experience, level up in the world, unlock some of the this higher capacity ammo, ability cards, and that way you'll definitely be at that point ready for PvP. Now I have one bonus tip for you, sort of regarding the gun oil that I mentioned earlier, sort of being one of the only things you should buy consistently from the general stores, or really the catalog. The purpose of the gun oil is to be able to clean your weapons. As you're going to see, if you obviously open up your weapon wheel and you highlight a weapon, you'll see your at the bottom statistic has condition, and you'll see right there pretty much for my bolt action rifle, my condition was a little under halfway, and that is right around when you want to clean your weapons. You don't want to necessarily do it when you're only like a bar empty or half a bar empty, because you're going to be wasting gun oil at that point. But the reason why I'm highlighting this is because this is easily, I am even at fault at this, I easily forget to clean my weapons, and you want to make sure you do that, because it will affect the performance of the weapon and ultimately your performance in PvE and even PvP. As far as I know, and as far as sort of the condition is concerned, I believe the condition is only affected with its use in free mode. I know that if you play like showdown modes or free mode events and you're using your weapons, the condition does not wear down, and I even believe that's the same thing with story missions. But in any case, do make sure that you do keep track of the condition of your weapon throughout its use in free mode. In any case, guys, that's pretty much all I have for this very long tips video. If you want even more information as far as a beginner is concerned in Red Dead Online. I know there are a few other guys on YouTube. I know Professional has a very detailed guide. This is a fairly detailed, almost guide in itself, but I'm sure he covered things that I didn't necessarily cover, and I'm sure I covered things that he didn't necessarily cover. So if you want even more details on beginning in Red Dead Online, I would check his guide out as well. He has a very, like I said, a very detailed beginner's guide like this video. But in any case, guys, I hope you enjoyed this very long video. I hope you found it very beneficial. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, and be sure to leave comments if you have any questions. And as always, have a great day.